Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. Pietra Dura refers back to the ancient technique whereby small pieces of precious stones are cut and sculpted into exactly the right size, a bit like a wonderful jigsaw puzzle, and then all placed together. And the first time I came across it in polymer clay was with a wonderful lady called Sue Heeser, who I'm sure a lot of you know, and she did a demonstration and showed her Pietra Dura work, and I just fell in love with the idea and the technique. And I do it slightly differently, I believe, from other people, in that I don't bake the pieces first. I use the clay whilst it's still soft and put the pieces all together in a jigsaw. And I do things like this where I outline what I've then done. It just gives it sort of slightly more theatrical look, I suppose, but it's also much more forgiving when we're working in polymer clay. So I thought I'd do a relatively simple effect for you today, which is what we've done here. This is my own design. Later on I'll show you the actual design. I am more than happy for you to use this. I've done this particularly for this video, so there's no copyright on this design. It is there out there for you to use. However, if you want to do a different design and it's not of your own drawing, then please do make sure that A, it's copyright free, or if it's not copyright free, you have the permission of whoever's work it is before you take it and use it. It's not a technique for everybody. I'm doing it because it's something I love to do, and I've always wanted to give a relatively easy sample so that people could have a go if they want to. So that's what I'm planning to do in the tutorial today. I hope you'll enjoy this one, and we'll start by going through what you need to complete the project. When you're coming up with your design, draw it to start out. So I decided straight away I was going to do the oval. So this is my first little sketch. Then I went on to this, which I was happier with the flower facing down and leaves at the bottom. So I finally went with this one. But when I did a practice run, I realised that this bit here was just too complicated. Having that into 3 parts was too complicated. So I simplified it again, and I ended up with this design. So as you can see here, we've got the nice design of the flower going around. However, if we're trying to cut out pieces of the clay, the whole of this background would all be one whole piece, and that would make cutting out very, very difficult. So what you need to do, once you've come up with your design, is to add little lines where it goes to the outside. And this means that all these pieces can be individually cut and makes life more simple. Once you've come up with your design and you're happy with it, you're going to need to copy this 4 times. So there we go, there's our 4 copies of the same design. Now one of them you're just going to keep that to one side, that'll be for reference. One of them you're going to do cut out and just keep in its circular form, like that. 2 of them you're going to number, and you're going to number them exactly the same, so all the pieces are going to have little numbers. Then one of them you keep like this, and the other one you're going to cut out all these tiny little segments. And they're all my bits ready cut out inside a little jar. So they'll be ready to put on the clay in a moment. So that's what we're going to do with the design, and that's what you need before you start anything else. And now I'll take you through the equipment you're going to need. First thing you need is a pasta machine and wet wiped. You're going to need a pair of scissors, the smaller the better because we're going to be cutting out some very small pieces. A craft knife. Knitting needle as always, just to smooth over any edges. A roller or some stainless steel soap, both of which are to smooth down the pattern when we're working. A tissue blade as always to cut through anything. We're going to need a little dish or container, just something to hold our little paper cutout bits in, so it doesn't have to be that, just anything that's to hand, a little bowl will do. We're going to use a little bit of liquid clay, so I've just decanted some into a pot here for ease of my use. Any brand of liquid clay works well. We're going to use an extruder, and for those of you who've got extruders, we're going to use the die that's the smallest die you normally get, or smallest disc that comes with your extruder sets. It does come in as a single hole, but personally I find it easier when I'm extruding to extrude through multiple holes. It's not quite so hard on the hands. So that's what I'm going to be using today. And we're also going to be using a needle which has got a nice sharp end, but which also is roughly the same size as those holes. So this one's about perfect. This is the clay beading needle that you get with the bead roller sets. If those of you have got that, if not, an ordinary needle will work absolutely fine. A little bit of tracing paper just to cover over when we're smoothing down. Now the design I'm working with, and I've used the Curves template by Melanie Muir, and that's number 67, but obviously use whatever you do. We're going to use this nice big one as a cutout. If you haven't got that, or you want to use any of your own templates, that's absolutely fine. Just to work on, just to give a bit of extra ease for working on, I just work on a laminated sheet. It doesn't need to be graph paper this time. This just happens to be the one I work on, but any form of plastic sheet or a bit of baking paper, parchment, wax paper, something like that, just for ease of working on. But as I say, I'm going to be using a laminated sheet. So those are all the tools we need. So let's move on to the clay. For the background of our piece, and to cover over the back later, we're going to use about 1/4 of a pack of normal small size blocks of clay. So that's about 1/2 ounce or 14 grams, depending on which way you're working. For the background skinner blend, we're going to have 4 different colours here I'm using, and these are going to be 1/8 of an ounces or 3.5 grams, and then for these particular ones, these are all 1/16 of an ounces or about 2 grams. So I'll run through the colours. This happens to be Fimo Soft. Again, all clays will work well for this technique. This is actually Dolphin Grey. This is the underneath colour. It doesn't have to be a particular colour. It can be scrap clay. I'm using Dolphin Grey today because it shows what I'm doing. That's the only reason I'm using that. So scrap clay would be perfectly fine for the background that you're going to lay your pattern on top. I'm using black to do the piping bits and to go around the outside. Then for my background skinner blend, I have plum, Pacific blue, white and peppermint. For the leaves, I'm using forest green, apple green, lemon yellow. For the petals, we've got raspberry, flamingo and lemon yellow. And then for the bits that just go at the bottom of the flowers, I've got a slightly different blend from this just to make it different. So I've gone apple green, forest green and white. So those are the clays. So let's start with the actual technique. So I've rolled out my background colour, which say in my case happened to be the Dolphin Grey, but it can be scrap clay, and I've done it on setting number 4 on my pasta machine, which is quite a thinnish setting. My pasta machine 0 is the thickest and 9 is the thinnest. Then I'm simply going to lay the circular cutout that I've made on my clay, making sure I've got a nice bit of area to work with around the outside, and then with the sharp point of my needle, first thing I'm going to do is just very gently score around the outside so I can see where the outside is. And then I'm just going to press down with the needle to make an impression on the underneath clay, a bit like tracing. And I need to go around every line that is drawn. So I'm not pressing too deep, just enough so that when I lift it up, I will have the whole pattern revealed underneath. When you think you've finished, just lift it up, check that you can see, and hopefully you can just about see there that I've got the whole pattern nicely inscribed on the clay. So we can now put that to one side. First thing we're going to do is make our background colour. So I'm going to take our 4 colours that we decided to use, and we're going to do a skinner blend with these. Now for a simple skinner blend, I'm not going to bother chopping them in the diagonals. This is nice soft clay, so I'm simply going to give it a bit of a roll to give it a head start so it goes through my pasta machine nicely. And I'm going to put it through the pasta machine that way down on setting number 4. Once I've put it through once, I'm going to bring it back, and to get that nice diagonal that we get in a skinny blend, I'm just going to pull this over but skew it. So can you see how much I've pulled it? So I haven't done it straight, I've pulled it so that all those colours are going to mix and intermingle. I'm now going to put it back through the pasta machine, fold down, and then keep repeating it, collecting at the bottom, folding up, collecting, folding up, collecting, folding up. Every time I do it, I do turn that way because, as you know, if you watched my tutorials before, the fantastic tip we got from Sarah Shriver was that pasta machines, the rollers aren't symmetrical, so if you want to stop it going weird shapes, you just turn it each time you do it as well. I'm also going to make sure every time I put it in, I butt it right up hard close to the edge of the pasta machine because I don't want it going much wider than that. It needs to be effectively just about the width, but not necessarily quite, the length, not necessarily quite the length, because I'm going to do it on a diagonal. So I will bring you back when I have created the background skinner blend. So there we are, this is my skinner blend finished. I'm happy with that, so I can put that to one side. And now I'm going to do exactly the same with all these little ones. Same thing, skinner blend, so I'll just start with this one. So as before, give it a roll. Put it through the pasta machine on setting number 4. And again, we're going to bring it out once and just skew it. So again, I've just pulled it over. As you can see where I've done the blend there, so the greens are all going to mix together. Same thing, we want to keep this one quite nice and short, so I'm going to butt it up against the edge of the pasta machine. Don't worry too much because we're about to manipulate this, but say it makes it easier if you keep it nice and short. So there we go, we've got our nice blend going on. So we want to change the shape of this because we want to cut out our tiny leaf shapes. And you want to have a nice bit of grading from the yellow all the way through to the dark green, but obviously this is much too wide for tiny shapes like this, so we want to make this into a smaller skinner blend. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can fold it like that to give yourself quite a nice small piece and put it back through that way, or I could have cut it into 3 slices and put it together. If I'm doing big pieces, I always tend to cut them. Small pieces like this, I would tend to fold them. There are pros and cons for both. If you fold, there is a possibility of getting air trapped, although that doesn't normally happen, but the other thing that does happen quite a bit is this can come out curved. And on a small piece like this, it's not really a problem. On a big piece, it can be. The downside of doing the cutting way is that when you've got your strips laid on top of each other, if you're not holding on to the end of them, they can come apart in a Y. So if you're doing it the cut way, then whichever end is going through the pasta machine last, hold on to both bits to make sure they don't separate. So on the same setting we're going through at the moment, setting number 4, I'm going to put it through the pasta machine that way down to give myself a long piece, and then I'm going to put it through the pasta machine on a very thin setting, so setting number 9 on my machine. So there we go, nice long thin strip, and I'm just going to concertina this from one end. When you're concertinaing, when you are concertinaing, it doesn't matter which end you start from. When you go, try and make sure if you can that any of the folds, there's no air trapped inside. But you can see it's only probably about 1 centimetre, 1/4 of an inch, something like that in thickness. They're not very thick at all. And then I'm just going to push it down, make it slightly square, because what I'm looking at is the length across there. I want that to be long enough that I can take my the longest leaf I've got, so that would be fine. So what we can now do is take a slice of that, and if we take quite a thick slice, and I'm going to pinch one end down, don't worry about the folds coming apart, it's about to go through the pasta machine. I'm going to put it through the pasta machine that way in to give myself a longer thin strip, again on setting number 4. Everything we're doing, all these pieces we're doing, they're all going to be on setting number 4, or whichever corresponding setting you use on your machine. So there we go, so now I have a nice long strip I can put my leaf cutouts on, and I'm going to repeat that for the tops here of the flower buds, and also for the petals. So the petals will be like that, and this one will be like that, and I'll bring you back when they're all done. So So there we go, those are all my pieces done. My background Skinner blend, my piece which has got the score marks on, and now it's going to be very much a case of a jigsaw puzzle. So here are all my little pieces. Here's my template that I'm going to use to decide roughly where I want that to go. So I'm going to put that piece there, and then I've got my other one here with all my numbers on it so I can figure out what I want to go where. And I will start with number 3, if I can find number 3. That's one of our biggest pieces. So if I figure out where number 3 goes, and I want that to go about there, so I'm just going to put that piece in there, and that's all I then need. I can now get rid of that because all the other pieces you can start figuring out as you go around. So number 4 goes somewhere like there, and I would say don't be exact over this. It looks quite nice if you haven't got them exactly in place, and that's another reason why we're doing this as individual pieces rather than doing one big cutout for the background. You also want to leave yourself enough room to be able to cut round each piece. So that's number 4. We've got number 7 and number 8. So number 8's around the outside. Let's put him there. Is that number 7? Yep, number 7. So we'll put him about there. So we've got number 14 as an outside piece. There we go. So he can go, let's put him about there. And we've got 15 in the middle there, which is a little hourglass type little vase of some sort. Put him there. Well, actually, it's the wrong way up, isn't it? That's the only thing to remember if you're doing it in one direction. It's because I've got that up that way and I'm doing this up this way. Right, 15, then we've got 19, which is a little one down the bottom. And then right at the bottom, number 21. So we'll put him in about there. Right, so that should then leave us our flower buds. Now I'm going to have it so that the pink is the bottom end and the bit up here is towards the yellow. So we're going to put 10 in the middle there. And then we've got 9 and 11 either side. So there's number 9. So he'll go about there. And somewhere we've got number 11. So that goes there. And then whilst I'm doing this, I'll do number 1 at the same time. And again, the same thing. I think I'll put him, yes, let's put him so he's quite pink, because that's going to look nice against the blue up there. So we'll do that there. Then the leaves, I'm going to do it so that the leaves, so the green is the top part and the yellow is towards the base. So I'll do that there. So 20, put him around that way. So the yellow is going to be this end. Green up there. And this one is going to be that way up. So what else we got? 16. It's going to be that way. So we've got green here. This end's going to be yellow. And then this one, this little one's number 5. So here's like that. So again, green that end, yellow that end. It doesn't really matter if you don't do this, but as I say, I just wanted it to look more uniform when I was doing it. So number 13 is that way up. So he'll be going towards the pink in there. Oh, sorry, that was 12. Number 13, we'll do him that way. It's all in the pink, so that'll be fine. And then these two little ones, I'm going to put him going across here on this one. And across here on this one. So those are all our pieces placed on. So now we've got the interesting thing of chopping them all out. I do this with a craft knife, and this is another reason why I do it on laminated sheet, because you can twist the sheet round and move round. I would start with the leaves because they're the easiest shapes to do, And when you're doing this, to give yourself a chance when you're pulling the pieces out later or taking the excess clay away, always go right from the edge. In the same way as here, we've gone to the edge of the piece in order to make it easy for us. Do the same when you're cutting out. Now you might need to put your finger on these to stop them slipping off the clay. But can you see I've gone right from the top and then to the bottom. So now I can swing that round and press in and up. Do the same with this one. From the top right the way around to the bottom. And by doing this, you can then easily pull away the excess clay to leave your pieces in place. So I'll carry on to do those in a second. These ones, the trick, whenever you've got something like this where you've got a sharp shape going inwards, always start from the middle of your point and work outwards. Because remember, the outside is scrap clay, so it doesn't matter how many times you cut down it. And that way, even those small shapes will be quite easy to cut down round. And if we take him up round here, pull the excess clay off, you'll be able to see that you can pull the excess clay off quite easily and leave that shape in situ. So do that for all your pieces, get them all cut out, and we'll come back when I've done that. Okay, there we are, all our cutouts done and all ready to go. When you're doing it at home, you don't need to pull all the excess clay out like this. I've done this purely because this is a video and it's easier for me to show you like this, but just leave it in place and just take them out as and when you need to. It is, however, handy to leave your numbers on, both so that you recognise easily which each piece is, but also which way it's orientated, because if you've done the numbers the same on both, then that'll give you a clue as to which way up things go. So, fitting it all together. Two things. One, be careful when you pull your pieces off. Particularly when they're shaped like this, I will normally get the tissue blade underneath them to make sure they stay as they are meant to be. And when you're working on a piece like this, you want to start from the middle, a middle piece, and work towards the outside. So I've just placed him on there, and start with your most complex piece. Now obviously all these little cutouts in here make this our most complex piece. So I'm not pressing any of these pieces down yet because we want to be able to manipulate these as we go around. The other thing is, as you finish with your little bits of paper, do put them back in whatever bowl you were using to keep them, because obviously you can reuse them. So it is a case of a little bit of juggling at times when you put your pieces in. So particularly on a piece like this, let me put it around so you can see what I'm doing. So you can use your craft knife just to sort of smooth the way where they're all going to fit together. And once he's down where he should be, you can push these two bits back up next. So let's go, number 9 is around here. So he's going to fit right inside there. There we go. Number 11. So if there's any bits stuck at all, just use your tissue blade. So he should actually go. So I have got a little bit of difference here when I was cutting out. I think I put one of the pieces upside down. But we're just going to, yes, I actually put this piece the wrong way up. That's because I took the paper off too soon. But as luck would have it, we'll just push that piece in. It's not going to make that much difference. And I can use the underneath bits here so I can see where I'm going. So that actually just shows you, don't worry overly much about it. If it's not going 100% to plan, don't worry. So number 13 is going in here. Let's just pick him up and slot him in. And we do want a bit of a gap in between all these pieces because that's where our beading is going to go. Number 12. You can just fit in here. And that is our first flower done. I'll do this one as well whilst we're going. This one hopefully won't be able to get the wrong way up. He should just fit in there. And again, as before, I haven't pressed these bits down so that when we put number 1 in, it will give me a chance to push him down and then push these 2 pieces back to where they should be. So those are our 2 flower bits through on. So we'll start with one of the big bits now. Let's do number 3, which is this bit back here. And just push them in. If you need to, just finesse it a bit or use your craft knife just to get the pieces to go around. And then just carry on building your pieces around. So I'll probably speed up a bit now because you get the idea of what we're doing and can see where we're going to go. So there we have our piece with all the bits jigsaw added in. Because I made that initial mistake, my pieces didn't quite fit in, but that's fine. As I say, we need the lines in between all the pieces anyway. So I'm going to take a little piece of greaseproof paper, and wax paper would do as well, and I'm just going to smooth across this with my finger, just merging those pieces in together. Now you'll probably notice when I'm doing this, I'm going from the outside inwards, and the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to make the whole pattern bigger, because I still want it to fit inside that template when we go to cut it off at the end. If you want to at this stage, you can use the stainless steel soap or your roller just to smooth over. I'm just going to do it just a little bit with this, not too much because we are going to do it again. Okay, we are going to add to our design by doing that outline, and we're going to do that by taking some of our black clay and putting it through the extruder. So condition your black clay thoroughly, then take off just a small amount. And roll it up into a little log that's going to be small enough to fit inside your extruder. And then extrude. And I say it's much easier to extrude through several holes than it is through one, which is why I've used the multiple hole one rather than the individual single hole of the same size. When you get to the end, drop those pieces off, and you have here loads and loads of individual pieces of clay which we will use to create our outline. So take your needle that we know is the same size, more or less, as our pieces we're going to do the groove for, and start creating all sorts of lines. Everywhere you had a join, that is where we're going to create these lines and these grooves. So I'm going to start with the big one here, because this one goes all the way down here. All the way up. And around. So you can see there, that's quite a deep groove. And then we can take a piece and you simply lay it into the groove. Because if your needle is the right size, that should be exactly the right size to fit. And then with your craft knife, just take it off at the end. press it slightly down in, and then repeat. So I will do the same for this leaf. Create a groove all the way around. Start at the end. Let it go down. You can either do it in 2 bits, or you can, just with your craft knife, just press that into the point, and then you should be able to put the other bit back around the other side. And just repeat doing that all the way around the whole outline for your piece. So I will do that and probably speed up a bit now as we go, and then see what it looks like when we're done. Okay, so there we are with all the pieces outlined. What you can do if you want to is just at this stage add some extra little bits. So in the leaves, I'm just going to add a bit, and then I might just add another little bit, a couple of little bits here. And because we need smaller bits and thinner bits, I'm simply going to roll extra bits in my hand and fit them into the grooves. And this way they've got a nice tapered end. Although bear in mind, if you're going to sand your piece, that probably won't take a lot to sand that off so you don't see it at all. Okay, so now I'm at the stage going back to my tracing paper or wax paper, whatever you've got, and now I'm just going to press down to make sure that all those insertions we've put in are nice and flush with the surface of our design. And again, I'm going to use stainless steel soap, little round circular motions, just to make sure that it's all nicely embedded and flush. What I'm looking for is to not see the joins where we've added all those extra bits, and give it a bit of a flat press. Again, I don't want to press too much because I don't want to distort the shape that we were working with. So there's our finished piece. So now we've got 2 ways of doing this. We can find our template, and if we haven't distorted the pattern too much, we can use the template to cut out. Or if, like me, you've actually pressed it now so it's quite a bit wider than that, take our initial piece of paper that we used, lay it down, and then simply cut a fraction wider all the way around. So I'm just going to go around with my craft knife and just go a little bit wider all the way around and that will give us a nice oval shape still, but a little bit wider to account for the extra clay we added into our shape. Pull the excess off. And let's see what we've got. Take it off very carefully, make sure I don't get any mess. And there is our pattern. So now I will remove that from the sheet. I'm actually just going to, you can of course just neaten it up just fractionally with the blunt side and edge of your tissue blade. Put it on a bare tile to bake on and bake as per your manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. And I will bring you back and then we'll put an outer layer on and then it'll be our finished piece. Once your piece is baked and cooled, we need to put a backing on it. You don't have to, obviously you can just leave it as it is, but I think it'll look nice with a surround. And if you want to see how that's going to look, just take a little thin layer of clay and put it around to see the thickness you want. So I've put this through on setting number 6 on my machine, which is a thinnish setting. And we're going to put a tiny little bit of liquid clay on the back and on the surrounds of this, and then we're going to cover all of this around this just to give it a nice black edge. So I'm just taking a little bit on my finger. And if you've been watching my videos before, you know how this goes. Not too much. We don't want it slippy, we just want it slightly tacky. And I will put on, rub it firmly over, and also take off, pull off any excess with my fingers. Just lay that down there for the minute and wipe my hands. And now we can pull this clay up. Right, go over on the back, make sure there's no air trapped, work from the middle towards the outside. Just putting that clay nicely over the back because you want the back to be nice and neat. I wasn't planning on putting any texture on this, obviously if you want to, feel free. And then we are just very simply going to pull this up and around the outside. Now those of you who watched my painting with clay video know that as far as I'm concerned I call this the Donna Kato technique, although I know there's loads of people on YouTube videos who've done this in the past. I don't know who first thought of it, but the first time I saw it was with Donna Kato, so in my mind it's always Donna's technique. So I've just pulled that up and around, give myself a nice edge all the way around, and then with the tissue blade you can simply go back in, find the level where the piece is flat, and carefully, keeping your blade nice and flat with the surface of the clay, go around and take the excess off. Anywhere where it's gone over slightly, it'll be because your piece was slightly raised, so go around. And I am planning to sand and polish this, so I'm not overly worried about too much in the way of excess black. If you weren't planning on doing that, then you can spend a bit longer making sure yours is really neat. And last but not least, with a nice clean wet wipe, I will pull inwards, make sure I'm not removing any clay from the edge, but just take away any of those marks or residues that I've just added by putting the black surround on. So if you don't want to sand and polish, obviously you don't have to. And there's your piece ready for its second baking. So as before, bake as per the manufacturer's guidelines for the brand of clay you are using. And then I will bring you back just to show you how I'm finishing off, although obviously you can finish this off in whatever way you want to. So whilst that one's baking, I thought I'd show you this one as another option, another colour scheme to do. So for this one I used Pacific Blue, Peppermint and then Lemon Yellow for the background. Leaves and these colours are exactly the same, but for the blooms I used white, a lilac and then into the plum. So that's the colour combination I got for that. And then you'll notice with this one as well, with the outlining, I did more what I normally do in the more complex Pietra Dura work. I do where I've outlined everything in colours rather than the same colour. So I used one colour for all the background bits where it goes through the background, green for the stem and for the dark sides of the leaves, and then a light acidic green for the light part of the leaves, and then two colours to go around the flower. So it's just another option you can do, but it does mean, however, you need to do quite a few more extruded colours rather than just the one colour that we do with the main one. So this one's been finished now. I've sanded and I've polished it. For the sanding I've used wet dry sandpaper, and I used 240 grit, 600 grit, 1000 and then up to 1500 grit, and then I just buffed it on a polishing mop. So that's how it's come out. Obviously if you don't want to do that, you can just leave it as is, or put a layer of varnish or resin or anything else over the top that you want to do. Just finish it however you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish it and put a finding on it in exactly the same way as I've done this one, and that's actually a teeny tiny little screw which I'm about to put in, and then a jump ring, a bail, and I've just added some, it happens to be leather thonging, but cord, whatever else you want to use, just to match. So here's my teeny tiny screw, and you can buy these sort of things on the internet or from good bead shops or little model shops. I think probably sell them as well. So I'm just going to make myself a pilot hole, so I'm just going to work out where the middle is of my pendant at the top. And having found the point, just drill myself a little pilot hole. And that should be all I need just to add a little screw in. There we go. And there's the little screw in place. And then if we get a couple of pliers, get our jump ring and our bail. And I'm just going to open up the jump ring by holding it on both sides and pulling it away from you to open it up. Through the screw, through the bail, close up by reversing what we just did. And then this time I've got a piece of black, just push through. And there we go. There's the piece ready to be worn. So there's our finished piece. And there was the alternative if you want to have a go at a different design. This is just a very simple form of basic Pietra Dura. If you like it, like I did, just fell in love with it right at the start, then again it could be something that you can go on to and experiment more and do more complex pieces. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to see photos of what you do with it. And thank you as always for watching. If you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. As I mentioned before, I really do appreciate subscribers, but I just really want you to watch, like, go away, play, experiment and enjoy. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.